Hello and welcome to Nerds at Night. This is a little different episode, obviously, as you can tell by the poor video quality and the fact that you're not staring at a game screen. That, as promised, if you've been following us on Twitter at Nerds at Night Gaming or at facebook.com/Nerds at Night, that we recently built our own bartop arcade machine, as you can see here. Now, I do want to start by giving a big thanks to Ryan and all the guys at GameRoomSolutions.com. They're the ones who I bought the materials to actually make the cabinet from and kind of walk around here. They also sent the templates to print out these graphics, which, I was able to edit them. They're supposed to be for Adobe, but I used GIMP and they work just fine. And the Kari Von Delara's fan fiction, that's my wife's fiction/fan fiction operation. She writes original stories as well as anime-based fan fiction. So look her up on there. I'll buzz by the Facebook part of her thing again one more time so you can see it. Okay, and also for those wanting to find us on Facebook, there you go. All right, now that those plugs are out of the way. Now, obviously, first question you're going to ask is cost. And I want to talk about cost in two ways. I want to talk about time costs to do this and cost in materials. All in all, I would say I probably have about $600 to maybe $650 in it, maybe a little bit more. Now, before you go crazy, this exact machine by any of the local markets you could get this from with the exact same parts in it is probably going to run you close to $1,200. So you save over half and you get the fun of putting it together yourself. And frustrations aside, this was a lot of fun. So, before we get too farther here, let's kind of continue to go over the outside. It's not on right now because I wanted to show you some of the technical insides before we started up. And I always feel better about looking at some internal stuff without power going to it. But pretty standard cabinet. Now, obviously, the screen size I chose was a 21.5-inch monitor. Okay, sorry about that little delay there. Our dog needed to go outside. Again, we do this out of our house, so ignore any odd noises you hear in the background. We ain't exactly fancy yet. But I do want to tell you now about the kit, because there's a lot of things that this kit included that I mentioned and gave the shout out to Game Room Solutions for. But this was the largest purchase or the largest share of the purchase, and there's a lot of great things that came with it. First, and you'll see these better in illumination in a minute, all of the buttons and joysticks, obviously the graphics, cover plates, which these aren't scratches. That's where I put the first set of graphics down wrong and got bubbles in it and got frustrated at myself and said the heck with it. But obviously, as you can see from the side panels, I got better. And at the front panel down here, I got better. So don't let one bad panel discourage you. Yes, I know Sailor Moon is on the side of my case, but hey, you have to do something to get your wife to say yes sometimes. And that's her original character there that actually in that community has a pretty good following. So I really shouldn't badmouth it. She's got quite a few loyal readers because every now and then I have to hear about it when she doesn't put out a story fast enough. But I digress. So anyway, now the kit comes with 20 buttons. They send you an extra one as well as if you get the LED style, and they have LED style, which these are. They also have kind that are ringed in chrome instead of regular plastic. All of them, really good life. The only problem I've had with them, you'll see later with this button, is one of the LEDs worked itself loose, but even then, it's fine. I can go in there and reattach it, and there's nothing saying in the moving it around and getting it situated on this table. I just didn't knock it in all the way. So you get 20 buttons, 2 joysticks. These are Soundwell, I believe is the brand joysticks. Really good. From all the playing I've done, a lot of life in them, plays very well. Now, that came with the kit. Obviously, so did all the pieces for your case. All the covering plexiglass. Also a plexiglass to cover the screen area. And that's all really good because you figure the way they've also got this set up is I did it the long way by hooking up to a JAMA harness and wiring everything the way you would as if this lived in a real arcade machine or had a real arcade JAMA board. Obviously it doesn't, it's a 621 in 1 game elf, but still, I use that method for a little bit more realistic feedback. What they give you includes USB encoders for the controllers and a USB PCB board, and you could actually hook this whole thing up to a computer and use these joysticks and buttons on a computer. So another cool idea, if you didn't want this whole experience, is you could take something like this front part here, make it into a sit box, and hook it up to your PC or hook it up to just the standalone Game Elf unit and a TV and have it all spread out if you wanted. So they actually have a lot of options, and they can help you out with case options for whatever you need. This is certainly not their only area. So let's go in here and look at some of the stuff I did, because there's some really cool things. And by the way, when you put yours together, be careful about where you put the magnetic catch strip for your door. I put mine at a little bit of a wrong spot and I'm too lazy to fix it. So every now and then I got to get in there with 2 fingers. So let me readjust my camera here and step around. So you have the door. They put it on a nice catch hinge. I know you can't see right now. Here we go. Big old trap nest of wires. Now, I want to point out a couple of things. You notice how even for these wires, like this one, that have clips, I still chose to cover them in tape. It's a good idea. Electrical tape, it helps guarantee, because if these touch, it won't destroy everything, but since these are wired to my lights, all my lights would flicker. The speakers I had to purchase, but these, you can get for a decent price. I also used a cold cathode tube out of a PC to do the surface lighting or the backlighting, for the marquee. This unit here, as hard as it is to see, this is the game unit. Has obviously the input for the JAMA. It's on the front end, so you probably won't be able to see it, but up there is where the SD card is with all the games. Where my finger is volume control. Yes, I know I put it in the most inopportune place, but I've done this in such a temporary way that I can change this around if I don't like it. I just wanted to keep all the wiring as clean as possible. And then this is the JAMA power supply. Now, if you notice, it's just a single rail power supply. I believe it's, what's it say? Up to, can do between 190 and 260 volts AC current in. So it's got your 12 volt line, 4 amps, your -5, grounds, +5, and then these are what's powering it. Now, I did a little bit of engineering, not much. You can find instructions on how to do this online, but most LCD monitors run on, the same voltage as this box, or can take the same voltages. So I actually wired right off of the in the power for the monitor, and it works. It doesn't overheat, doesn't give any weird voltages out. Everything I checked with a voltmeter gets all of the proper voltages, and it works. So unlike a lot of people who you see with these who have to have 2 or more power supplies, or they have to mount a power strip in here, I'm running off one power cable, and I'm running off of it clean. Well, minus the fact I didn't want to trim down these wires anymore until I decided I'll probably pull all of this out one time when I'm bored and redo it and remount everything better. But this was just to get it put together for the benefit of showing it off. And I apologize if there was a little hiccup right there. Now, if you've noticed, there's all of these cam locks, which is what holds the system together. When they show you their instructions, let me see if I can get it zoomed in on it. This one, if you look in the middle of your frame that you can kind of see, let me see if I can get the light to focus on it. There, that one was the only problem spot in this case for a regular user, because it's very hard with just your standard screwdriver to get back there and tighten that one, to the point where they say in their instructions it's not wholly necessary. I got around this by using an automotive screwdriver that's super long, which, by the way, I recommend you have for a multitude of home projects. It's come in handy a lot with screws that aren't necessarily at any weird angles, but are just really far away in a tight spot. All right, so that kind of goes over a lot of the hardware aspects. Big things to keep aware of. If you notice, I've got everything clipped down and clipped as clean as I can. No loose wires. Anywhere I joined wires, I wrapped and tape. Even if you use a heat shrink, whatever, you want as much protection as you can get. And as you can see down there, all of the joysticks are wired. In fact, that one is my problem child, red. And you see, let's see if I don't make an ass of myself here and ruin a bunch of stuff just trying to show you something. You can twist, if you're careful, you can twist this down when it wants to come out. You got to get it just right to get it all the way out and make sure you're not hitting any other wires. Well, I can't get it out right now. That's fine. I don't want to make it not work and then, oh, wait a minute. I promise you, when you're actually doing this and you have this all pulled out and sitting, you know, on your work table, this is a lot easier. But anyway, I'll fix that later. That was going to be the bad LED. I was going to show you how to fix it, but doing it one-handed is really hard and holding the camera. And one thing you have to be careful of is when you're undoing those, the controller, or I'm sorry, the button ports themselves are just screwed in. So if you go a little too crazy, then you won't be able to press the buttons, but it's still in, it's still clicking, still responding the same as the rest, so I'm happy. All right. Good Lord, you guys can probably hear me breathing really heavy. And I like that they pre-routed, let me see if I can get it on frame. There you go. They pre-routed that. So let's boot this up. Now, the program that GameElf uses is a mini Linux embed, from my understanding, with basically an older version of Mammal or something like that on it. Whew, excuse me. So, in reality, this isn't much different than what your setup would be if you were doing this on PC. However, I have noticed with the JAMA setup and everything else, you do get a lot better button response. Oh, must have thought I never fixed this. Sorry, I was editing some of my game stuff in the test menu and I forgot to fix it to where it doesn't bring this menu back up. But that's the individual game edit menu. So here we go now. We're into the games. Now, we don't have the time to go through all 600 games that are on here, but I did want to show off, what the machine looks like running, graphic quality. The board I'm using, the GameElf board, has a couple of different options. It can simulate, or it can actually connect out and simulate, if you're on JAMA, to standard arcade graphics, or it can do two different resolutions for LCD VGA graphics. I obviously chose the higher resolution VGA, and for most games it looks pretty good. Now I will warn you, before you mount your screen, power it on and make sure you don't have to actually go into your menu and adjust your screen centering. With these HD monitors, you get that problem sometime. And I forgot and had to sit here and, basically move my finger underneath it and have my brother tell me, okay, over one button, back one button, whatnot, until we got it right. So, just to show you how a game plays, I'll pick one I particularly like. Now, you can assign any button you want. Now, the diagram says you should always start off this one, make one of these your start, one of these your coin, if you're going to do coin. But to launch a game, you want to use player one button start when it decides to pick it up. There we go. It's got to load, and I'm impatient. Hopefully you guys can hear me. This is my first time recording off just the phone. Now, since I had it in individual edit mode, you also get this menu, which, if you've played on MAME, this should all look familiar. See? Should be 2. All right, so here we go. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to play one hand, and you're going to lose a little bit of its prowess in the fact that I'm recording this on an iPhone. I may sometime take the VGA input and do some wrangling with some cables I have and hook this up to my large-scale TV and let you guys see this on, my game recorder. But for right now, let's just stick with this. Come on, Hulkster. There we go. I don't even know if that's who I was. I forgot who I picked. I'm guessing that's not who I picked. Anyway. Oh yeah, I picked $1 Million Man. I don't know what I was thinking. There we go. Alright, so as you can see, this game plays very faithful to arcade. The JAMA feedback's really good for the buttons. And certainly worth the money. Now, again, you heard me talk about earlier some of the things that were included with the system itself. So let's talk about what wasn't included with the kit that I got from Game Room Solutions. This trim right here, this T-Track, wasn't included. Obviously, as I mentioned before, this upper lighting wasn't included. Neither were the speakers. And the power supply and the game unit itself wasn't included. So you had to purchase all those. And again, about $650 was my total dollar investment. I had a little bit of a false starting, let's say, doing some of the engineering to make this all work the way I wanted it to voltage-wise, because that's what you have to be careful of. So if you just did it the quickest, cleanest way you could do it to get it up and going, you're probably looking at about 5 or 6 hours of install time. It took me about 8, because again, I had to reclip some things to make them work on the JAMA power supply and everything else. So there was a lot more wire work in what I was doing. So that's this relatively short episode of Nerds at Night. Again, it's just Kid Thunder DJ, since I was the one who did most of the work on it, minus just holding parts for assembly. If you have any questions, please leave us a comment, like, share, subscribe. Our next playthrough video is still going to be either Grand Kingdom or Star Ocean. Just depends on which one I can get to first. It's been kind of a busy few weeks around here, so we're trying to get ready for back to school time and stock up on stuff for the last gasp of convention season. So been out trying to pick and find things where we can. Also, we're going to have another podcast soon, and just to remind you, Gamer Girl 101 is still due to join us. I'm not sure exactly when she's going to start episode-wise, but it's my goal to at least have her make an appearance on the next one. So you can find us at Twitter at Nerds at Night, Facebook.com/Nerds at Night, NITE, obviously here on YouTube. And I'm going to go ahead and post the link for Game Leak Solutions in there. Give them, heads up, give them a little check out if you're thinking about doing one of these yourself. It's a great game room piece. It's a great way to introduce young children to arcade classics in a more controlled way and a more separate way than, pumping a ton of money into online stores for game consoles and then them tying them up and not really getting that same feel that many of us who do this had growing up playing these things when they were in our malls and in our gas stations. So this has been Kid Thunder DJ. You guys have a good night.